Welcome to Real Talk Food Safety with Jill and Tia. And as you can see, today you're going to get a lot of me. So I'm so excited that you're here with us today. And if you are just joining in, if you've been here before, you know what we love to know is where you're calling or where you're joining us from, I should say. So feel free to use the comments and let me know where are you calling in from and say hello. It is so nice to see all of our guests and our audience that come back every week. We so appreciate you. Gosh, I don't know if you realize, but May is Small Business Month. And I am so excited to share our special guest with you today. So before I go any further, let me bring our guest in. Ta-da!
Hello, everyone.
Actually, I'm just really excited that Tia is back for today's show.
Hey, everyone. I missed you all so much, but I love listening to the real talks while I was out. And Jill and the amazing guests we had on the show blew me away. I loved April and our focus on onboarding. There were so many great tips on there. So, I'm so excited and happy that I was able to listen to them and happy that Jill was able to cover while I was out. I do have my beautiful baby girl, Tiana. So we've been enjoying life and, it's been different.
Well, I would imagine so. Now that you have another human that you're responsible for.
Right. Exactly. Whew, a lot of responsibility,
Well,
right?
well, yeah, and probably the big thing that everybody always wants to know is like, how are Tiana and Apollo, your dog, getting along?
They are, well, she doesn't pay him any mind. So it's as if he doesn't really exist to her, but he is so funny. He of course gets like anxious when she cries in the beginning. But now it's like if she's not crying, he's around, he's sniffing. If she's crying, he literally just turns and walks away. Yeah,
That's
he's just like,
hilarious.
I can't deal with this. I'm gonna turn and walk away. So, but he has taken it on like a champ, and we're really surprised about it. But it's good. I mean, she's here to stay, so he has to
Ah,
get used to it one way or another.
well, and for those people joining us, if you are on our newsletter list, then you've seen how adorable Tiana is.
Yes,
If
she.
you are not on our newsletter list and you want to be, drop us a message or just shoot us an email at hello@foodsafetykatalyst.com and you'll get on the list because we send information out every week.
Yes,
But
yes,
is she I've told Tia, I'm not much of a baby person. I have kids of my own, but I'm not a baby person. But
yeah.
Tiana, she is adorable. And I don't say that about many babies.
She's
So
cute, and yes, she's mine, but she is super cute. She's like a little baby doll.
she is. She's awesome. And we're so glad that 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 you're doing well, that she's doing well, and that you could
Yes.
be with us today.
Yes, I'm super excited about being back and slowly getting back into the groove of things. So, it just makes me excited, and I'm excited. I'm excited about Small Business Month.
Well, yeah, and we are too, right? We hope people out there are as well, because one of the things that T and I talk a lot about is, we've worked for big food companies.
Mhm.
And right, even when we're there, we're like, oh, we wish this part of our food safety culture would be a little bit different, or we wish this would be like this. And some
Right.
places are really great. Like we love
Mhm.
parts of it too.
Right.
And one
Yeah.
of the things as we started working in smaller companies, right, we saw different cultures, different food safety cultures.
Yeah.
And sorry, I'm like, and I'm right. We had these moments, right, where we're like, what we really found was companies early on, if we didn't start helping create the food safety culture they wanted, by the time they started growing, we started seeing these huge gaps in
Yeah.
where food safety was and culture and where the company was at. And so all this is like risk in between.
Yeah.
So that's
Absolutely.
why I love talking about this month, because we're talking about like how do we make this so much smaller so that that business risk, that brand risk,
Yeah.
that support is really there for new businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you're right. Once I moved into small business world or startup world, it was eye opening for me because, it. I guess you just know what you know, right? And you don't know what you don't know. And so being in the space, you're like, oh, things needs to be a certain way. But then you realize because they are a small business or they're a startup, their resources look different. The people look different. The
Mhm.
people resource, the financial resources, they're even like what's available to them look very different. And so, and for people that know us, know like this is a part of one of the reasons why we even have Catalyst is that we're
Mhm.
able to help small businesses move along the journey of food safety, and that they are making sure that they are covering the risks that they have as a small business and help their culture grow as they grow. And that's what's really important, and that's what we wanted to cover today as well.
Yeah. And so for people who are new joining us, hello, we're Jill and Tia. And like Tia just said, really our passion is about how do we help develop and grow technical leaders so they can develop teams and they can develop the food safety quality function that integrates with the organization because that's really what helps build food safety culture. And it's these moments that every single one of us can own every single day that help drive the culture that we want to see. And that's really where we love working with people to help make that change.
Mhm. And
So,
if you're new, we talk every Wednesday on Real Talk Food Safety. We're live every Wednesday at noon Eastern. And that's what we do. We offer tips, we connect with you all. We have a lot of people listening to us and adding their thoughts and comments into the comment field. So we learn from each other and we really do get real about what's happening in the food safety space and how you can help grow your food safety cultures if you're in the food safety industry. But even if you're just in food and you're looking and you're interested in food safety or how to grow your food safety culture, these tips will also help you.
very much so. So,
Yes.
yeah. So, yeah, as we go forward, drop things in the comments, questions, comments. We are going to be scanning those as we go forward. So, but today
Absolutely.
we're going to talk all about small business, aren't we, Tia?
Yes, we are. And we're really digging deep into how you can own your food safety journey,
Mhm.
even as a small business. So, Jill, I don't know about you, but like in my experience, when people talk about a food safety culture or a good food safety culture, to me, they're almost talking about like a world class food safety culture. And in order for an organization to be there, they have to have resources. So they
Mhm.
have to have a team of 10 people with lab technicians across all shifts. We're typically talking about that they've onboarded this technology that costs
Mhm.
thousands of dollars a year to help move the company from paper to electronic, and they're able to pull things up quickly. We're talking about state of the art equipment that our product is being ran on, and these full maintenance teams that can come in and fix anything under the sun as things break down. When people talk about food safety culture, that's typically the first thing that they kind of say. And sometimes it doesn't really resonate with a small business.
No, because that seems like the dreamy one, like the one that we're all like, oh, someday we can keep doing this hard work here in the trenches, and if we just keep doing this, we'll get there someday. We
Right.
hope.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, I agree. And when we meet small businesses, they're typically in this survival mode,
mhm,
where they're just trying to get their product in front of people. And with that, they have limited resources because they have limited funds, they have limited sales,
mhm,
and so they're trying to figure out how to be compliant. How do they make sure that their consumer is enjoying their product and not getting sick from their product, without spending money that really they don't have.
yeah. And Tia, I love that you pointed out right at the beginning, because sometimes when we talk about small business, um, there's so many different ways people define what does small
Mm,
business mean?
mhm. Yeah.
Especially when we think about May as Small Business Month, sometimes we talk about founders, right?
Mhm.
These like wonderful like entrepreneurs who are dabbling in these new spaces and making new food and maybe taking it to a farmer's market to sell and then thinking about a commercial kitchen and maybe then a co-man and
Yeah.
you know small business.
Mhm.
But you and I have both worked for what we would have called like a small business.
Yeah.
Um, and so, whether you're on this path, maybe working with a founder, an entrepreneur on their small business journey, or maybe you're in a small company, or maybe you're even in a big company that still maybe thinks and kind of operates like a
Mhm.
smaller company when it comes to food safety.
Yeah.
Like, there's so many different ways to think about what smaller means and like this, what we're going to talk about with maturity levels.
Right, absolutely. And I love that you brought that up on being in a company that might think that they are a small
Mhm,
company, but they have really grown past that. And that's what we want to dig into a little bit more. Um, because that's what we mean by owning your food safety journey is that you really
mhm,
understand where you are and how you need to grow over the years based off of the growth of your company. You know,
mhm,
we when we meet small businesses and they're in a position where they don't have a lot of resources, and we're helping them really build their food safety programs and food safety culture and food safety teams into the future. A lot of businesses, they're exactly where they need to be.
mhm.
They run into problems when their business has grown, their exposure has grown, their risk has grown, but their food safety culture hasn't grown along with it.
Yeah. Yeah, and and I think it's really interesting, especially like we grew up in GFSI schemes. And
Hmm.
so we're fully aware of like the GFSI white paper that talks about food safety culture. And that is an amazing document that is filled with incredible information. I don't know about you, but when I read through it, I was like, oh, that's me. Wait, that's us. Oh, this is what
Right.
we're
Yeah.
doing. Like I could see different companies that I had been at or
Hmm.
with teams in that guidance document, in that white paper. Um, but I also, because I really like summaries, like that was a lot to read through.
Yeah.
That was a lot of detail. And sometimes I think about small businesses and think they may not even be aware that that exists. And even if they do, that is a lot to digest.
Hmm. Yeah. It's a lot to digest. And really, it's from our technical field of food safety. So if
Mhm,
you don't have a background of food safety, some of the things you might even miss or don't understand, why they're important to your food safety culture, or you're not able to look at it and say, oh, that doesn't really apply to me because of my product or where I'm located or our processes or whatever it happens to be. And that's just from a technical standpoint, right?
mhm,
So it's important for us, and at least for us at Catalyst, like we really focus with our clients on where are they, how do we make sure that we are tailoring what we're saying to where they are, to their company, to their brand, because that's so important. And
mhm.
we know from a culture standpoint, right? Like no two company cultures are the same. You
No.
have your own risk, you have your own people, you have your own way of doing things. Really, you need to just own that and grow within your own culture as your business grows, as your risk grows, as your portfolio changes, and so forth.
Yeah. And that's why I love that we've created kind of our own terms
Yeah. Yeah.
around what the food safety journey looks like. So that way we can help as people are transitioning from stage to stage because
Yeah.
right, this is all about like how do we help set organizations up for success with food safety and quality culture. And I know Tia, you and I talk a lot about right. There's so many different ways that organizations do this, and there's different approaches. So we talk a lot about right, like operations. I'm going to pick on operations because right, they're easy. But they
Sure.
typically will have somebody come in and help them navigate some type of operational efficiency journey or something. And so
Yeah.
really this is kind of, I don't want to say a parallel because it's not quite the same, but yet it's about how do we help support organizations and teams and people wherever they're at to navigate through this.
Yeah.
And our four stages, right, are really easy: compliance focus, early maturity, moderate maturity, or world class. Pretty easy
Absolutely.
buckets, right?
Hmm. And we've kind of broken down these four stages based off of an operational mindset, the
Mhm.
type of food safety and investment a company's taking or making at the time, and then the consumer risk and the
Mhm.
consumer exposure. So, for instance, where your culture may be or can thrive at, if you're in a local market, like when we talk about like if you're in one store versus like if you're in a region of stores,
Mhm.
or if you're a national or global organization, your risk looks different. And so when you look at a food safety culture, the way a company is operating at the local level versus at the global level should be different.
Mhm.
um, Especially because your risk is different, right? So we take those into account as we think about these four stages.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me, I chuckle when I was with a larger company, right? Like, for example, let's say, oh, I don't know, our traceability, right? Our
Mhm.
policy or program was like this robust program that had very specific information and steps for every single step of the way. Not that that's not applied to other smaller organizations, but I remember going to a smaller organization and going, wow, if we had that level of detail, that would be so overwhelming.
Mhm.
They are not ready for this massive set of instructions because
No,
they don't have, 1,000 people that all need to be able to go to one document or, two documents
exactly.
to try to garner information.
Exactly.
And they're also not necessarily shipping all across the globe.
Right.
So they don't have to address all of these different scenarios that wouldn't come up. And
Right.
so
Exactly.
I
And
think
that's important.
it is. It's kind of this mindset, even as a food safety quality professional, to go, oh, what works here doesn't mean that you throw the baby out with the bathwater, but
Right.
like, what does it need to look like over here so that it can be relatable and practical in this organizational type setting?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So we would love to walk through these four stages
Mhm.
really quickly, just kind of talking about how we see the four stages of the food safety journey. And
Mhm.
as we go through these stages, kind of think about where your organization is. And then we would love to hear from you in the comments on what would you add? What would you do you agree? Where do you
Mhm.
think your organization is currently in the stages, and how you can own your food safety journey along the way.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny, Tia, right now. I don't know if you noticed, but like once in a while with StreamYard, that our streaming service, like our comments don't populate. So
Mhm.
if you are commenting, thank you. We can see all of them when we go back into LinkedIn, but right now they're not coming up for us. So if
Right.
there's
Yeah.
a delay in getting back to a comment or a question, I just want you to know that it's not because we're not looking. It's just that
Right.
there's a delay right now. So
Yes. So we typically go back and look at the comments and respond to them anyway. So we will go back, like Jill said, and
check them out.
respond to your comments. Yes. So please still add your comments, and then the people watching right now should be able to see your comments on LinkedIn. So feel free to respond and add your thoughts.
Absolutely. All right. Well, let's jump in.
Yeah. So the first stage that we talk about is this compliance focus stage, and the way we define this first stage is that your food safety mindset is a have to. You're typically in this area where you must comply in order to make your product, and right now you probably have limited to no compliance, right?
Mhm.
Like you don't have any documented procedures or limited documented procedures, and you really need them, right, in order to make food. And so the investment of your organization is really limited to this regulatory compliance. You're putting in investment into your organization to make sure that you are compliant from an FDA standpoint, USDA, or local health department.
Mhm. And I always find it interesting because This first step can sometimes be it's really a shift in this perspective because a lot of times we find small businesses that are like, they're doing so many wonderful things,
Yeah.
but shifting to go, wow, I have to have a record of actually doing all of this stuff now.
Mm-hmm.
I have to have a document that says, yep, this is a coordinated, intentional effort. And now this is how I do it. And so I always think this part is really like kind of a fun stage as people are like, what? I need to record that too?
Right. Yes. Yes, exactly. And I mean, we kind of talked about it, the things that people don't know, they don't know. And
Yeah.
so we're here to help them get to the point of, okay, you have the basic compliant building blocks in order to move your food safety culture forward. And I know we talk a lot about compliance, and typically compliance is like this, oh, don't say it in food safety and quality, right?
Well, did we
Um,
even do a show, Compliance, the Dirty Word?
Right, exactly. Yes, yes. So check out that old episode because it's true. In food safety and quality, we say, if we have an organization say, but are we compliant? Are we compliant? That is just like, to our ears. But it's because they haven't moved from this stage, and they should
Mhm.
have moved from the stage. However, there are small businesses that should be at compliance, and they
Yeah.
should be focused on how do you make sure that your programs comply to local and federal regulations. And it's an important stage to have in there because so many small businesses aren't there yet.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think I think one of the things is it doesn't mean that there isn't brand risk and there isn't organizational risk. But I think like Tia, like you said earlier, it looks different. And it's how do we eat the elephant? Right? Because
Mm-hmm.
to get to the dreamy food safety culture state we all want, you don't just go from zero to up here.
Right.
There's these stages in between, and compliance can be the first step and often the right step. And well, it is the right step for every business where they're starting. So,
Right. Exactly.
mhm,
A piece of this too that we look at to determine, if you should be in this bucket of compliance focus, is what your consumer exposure is.
yeah.
Typically, if you are in this compliant focus, and you're not behind on your journey, right? Your consumer exposure is very limited. You
Mhm,
are selling in a very limited space, whether it's from one storefront in New York City that you're selling from, or one local place or a couple of local places in your area. So that risk is a little different. And you have the time to really get up to compliance. Where compliance become a dirty word is when you are selling at a regional level, or you're selling at the national level, and someone's saying, oh, but are we compliant? Well, you should be a little bit more than compliant because your exposure, your risk is so much higher.
yeah, and I think it's also like you talked about, right? We are helping bridge we don't even know that we don't know.
Right.
And so often with small businesses, right, there are these talented founders and small business owners, but they're not always food safety quality trained
Right.
professionals.
Mm-hmm.
So that's part of what we, get the honor to do is to not, to really demystify food safety and quality and really help it be a little bit more, can I dare say fun,
Yeah.
but not as scary to go along this journey on compliance because right, we've all had different things like having a baby where you're like, I don't even know what I don't know. What am I getting into? So the more we can help demystify some of those steps, the easier it helps you then be able to ask questions and be ready for the next stage.
Right, exactly. And I love this baby analogy. We should think about this a little bit more because, like, when Tiana first showed up, it's more like, okay, I just need to know the basics, right? When do I feed her? How do I change her? Like, how do I, like, what do I carry her in? Make sure I have the right, car seat, and like, I just need to know the basics. you know,
True.
so that's a
But
really
you weren't even ready for the next stage, right? Of like all the next things.
exactly. No, no,
Mhm.
no, no. Just give me the bare minimum in order to keep this baby in surviving, And honestly, that's a really great analogy to our clients that's on the first stage of compliance focus. They really are at the point of I just didn't know exactly what I need to do so that someone doesn't shut me down when they come into my facility or that I'm not going to cause an issue in the marketplace because of my lack of awareness. And
Mhm.
so like that is really the first stage and it's the first stage for a reason, right? Like it's not our last stage. That means that companies should not stay here.
Right.
And it's important as you own your own food safety journey that you are making sure that you move past this stage because it's not going to serve you forever.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that we talk about as well is typically in this stage, because we don't even know necessarily what food safety and quality, like what does it mean to own the program? What does it mean to invest in the
Mhm.
program? Right. Typically we find there isn't even a budget for that
Right.
to do
Yeah.
food safety. It's like we know it's going to be like, oh, it's a business expense now. Oh, okay.
Right. Right.
Here we go.
Exactly.
Um, but it's part of that investment in the resources to help us then move into the next stage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. And that's part of the strategy work that we also do with our clients to say, like, I know you don't have a dedicated food
Mhm.
safety budget now,
Or
but
team.
really once you move to phase two, which is early maturity, you
Mhm.
should have some type of food safety budget. And what we see in the second stage of early maturity is that really the mindset has switched from a have to do this mindset to I want to do this. So now I want my food safety programs to be a little bit more robust. I want to make sure that we have our gaps covered. You
Mhm.
know, I I want to grow, right? And so I want to make sure that when someone picks up my product in a grocery store that they're not going to get sick and it's the right type of quality. So the mind shift has shifted a little bit, right?
Mhm.
Where it's more into like, I want to do this for my brand.
Mhm. And I think it's interesting because even right, we see the shift, we know the shift is happening. And sometimes when we've had had the opportunity to work at a company that maybe is further along in the maturity, just
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I don't know about you, but I remember feeling a little bit of my own little pain point here going, I get that we're at the want to, but we need to be to the like next stage of like
Mm-hmm.
and be further on. But it really took recognizing that even being at this shift from, "Oh, I have to do this," to actually I want to because I see that there's value in looking at the risks and minimizing some of these risks and understanding more about how food safety fits with my business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the shift from I have to I want to, that's a hard shift.
Mhm.
And it's one of the hardest shifts along the journey because typically people get to the point of like, okay, I want to do better in this space. I want to give a little bit of money to it each year. I want us to, at this point, your organization might invest in a third party GMP or a food safety audit where someone else is coming in and doing an audit for the organization. You may or may not get one or two dedicated food safety and quality people, and your exposure is starting to grow. I've been in an organization where they were switching from a have to a want to. And it's one of the reasons why myself and my counterparts were hired, is because now they want to do better in the food safety space. But I remember having a very specific conversation with one of my operations supervisors. And, when I first started, I met with all the supervisors and kind of just understanding where they are and how they feel about food safety, that type of thing. And I remember one specifically saying, like, I am so happy you're here. I cannot wait until we change the things that we're doing. Like, we are ready
Mm.
to change. We know we need to change. And I remember having a conversation with her and saying that I want you to remember the way you feel in this moment, because change is hard. And there's going to be a time that I'm going to push out changes, and your instinct is going to say, well, why? We've done
Stop.
this all the time. Like, we've been doing this for 3 years. Why do we need to change now? Why do we need to add this documentation? Why do we need to do this little more extra work? And I remember, like, setting that. I remember her face too, like, just kind of putting in that reality on, like, I love it that you want to do this and you're ready for change. But it's going to be hard, and we're going to have these hard conversations more times than we can count. But just remember that you are open to this, and we know change is coming. And the moment that you think, well, that's not what we've done in the past, I want you to challenge yourself on it. And this is one of the hardest in the stage, I would say.
I would say so too, because I think it's also where after we've gone through compliance, like we start to know things, but we
Mm-hmm.
still are unaware that there's like, I don't know about you. The more we know, the more we recognize we don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we've had this little bit of a taste of, okay, I understand some basic compliance and that I need to do this. But this is right where we're looking for kind of that next stage of, well, where are some areas that compliance isn't enough
Mm-hmm.
or isn't managing the risks well enough or to the level that the organization feels good about.
Right. Yeah.
And I think it's also a stage where with smaller, I'm gonna say smaller businesses, right? They've grown with a team, and sometimes they like kind of find someone who seems to gravitate towards maybe doing some of this food safety quality work, and so they kind of
Mm-hmm.
are earmarked as the person who takes on some of these like verification and managing documents and helping with compliance.
Yeah.
And I think it's also a space where, how do we help them make sure they're having the success they need because they're stepping into this new space where they don't know sometimes what they
Yeah.
still don't know.
Right, exactly. And that's a really, really great point. And one of the ways we partner with our
Mm.
clients, making sure that the teams that they are now starting to put together have the support that they need, so that they can grow as a technical individual, but also help their organization grow. Um, yeah.
Yeah,
And
because this is the exciting time, right? When they're moving from like small local markets to like getting some attention, or people are,
then,
the bigger retailers are going, hey, we've heard about your product and there's interest. And that can be so exciting because, right, they just see the growth that can happen, but yet
right.
their food safety programs are still down over here.
Right,
So,
exactly, exactly. This is also the time that, you've gone through this compliance work, you've onboarded a third party audit, and now you have all these corrective actions that you need to do.
mhm,
So it's like, and you kind of talked about that wake up call, right? Where it's like, you're not doing enough because your exposure is getting bigger,
yeah.
and we all know we have to move past the compliance stage. So you start getting these corrective actions where it's like, man, I thought we were compliant, and like you're switching again your mindset to say that, okay, there's some improvements that I can do. Even if I'm compliant, there's some improvements that I can do to still minimize or eliminate the risk that I have.
Well, and I think that's a good point because I think that's also part of the recognition of I can't just expect food safety and quality programs and culture to happen on their own. I
Right,
need to actually start putting aside some investment towards that.
right.
Which, right, as a small business, as any business, that can be a challenge, but especially as a small business because the pie is much smaller. And
Hmm.
so when you think about, well, what does that look like? Like, what does it mean to invest in food safety? And how do I start creating a budget to help move things forward to the next stage if that's where their business wants to go?
Right,
That really starts here with
exactly.
mapping that out and helping people start looking ahead the next year or 3 years out or 5 years
Mhm.
out, because that's all being set in these early stages.
Right, exactly, exactly. And the point that you're making around, like, you then need to start looking out 3 years, 5 years
Mhm.
down the road, 10 years down the road, because eventually you're going to have to leave this stage, right?
Mhm.
And you move on to what we call our moderate maturity stage. And this stage is really what we call the will do mindset. And so you're really moving from the, okay, I want to do these things so that I can grow my food safety culture, to I will do these things because we have to have a strong food safety culture, and so we have to start building these things into our business. So this might be a part of the organization where they're starting to move from like those local regional markets to like a national market.
Mhm.
And this is typically the time where they onboard a GFSI type certification, where they're really trying to get on a playing field with the rest of the globe from a food safety standpoint. They want to make sure that their policies are comparable, that when they go to a national market and someone asks a question, they'll be able to recognize the work that they're doing versus something that's very specific to their small business.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting, right? Because so many organizations do have GFSI certification.
Mhm.
Does that mean they're always in moderate maturity?
No, not
Mm,
necessarily. And I think about moderate maturity as probably our largest bucket
mm.
of companies. It's sometimes where
This is
companies,
the under the bell curve. This is the big chunk there.
yeah, this is where I would say the big chunk exists. And for some, it's because they're supposed to be there.
Mm,
But even so many companies that you would think are large companies and should be at our fourth stage of world class, they're sitting in this moderate maturity because they're leaning on a GFSI certification,
mm,
where it's like, and we've had these conversations too on Real Talk, where a GFSI certification, once you get to a certain level of maturity, I see it as like that is the bar, right? It's the bar to entry, but it's not the end all be all,
mhm.
and it doesn't really, if you have GFSI certification, doesn't mean that you have a strong food safety culture or a sustainable food safety culture. So, but a lot of companies that you would expect on these global markets, they are really sitting in this moderate maturity because they lean on the GFSI certification, or their organization has grown, and again, their food safety culture doesn't keep up with that growth.
Yeah, it's almost like we get to the GFSI state and they're like, "We've arrived."
Yep, check.
Right? Like, that's done. Like, woo, all we have to do now is kind of maintain the system.
Right.
Well, and I guess, depending on, once again, organizations are all different, depending on the culture, on their risk tolerance,
Right.
maybe,
Hmm.
right? As a food safety quality professional, I'm like, please no, right?
Right.
It's a good place to get to, but
Mhm.
yet let's keep on this journey
Right.
because we all know, right? When we move from this stage where it's the I will do just these things, right?
Mhm.
Even if it is GFSI, we want people to get to the next one where
Right.
they love doing this stuff and it's
Exactly.
so part of what they do. But it,
Exactly.
before we move to the next one, sorry, 2 points here,
Yeah.
kind of. The other part that I think is so fascinating is when we talk about this modern maturity, right, we've talked a lot about there may be a budget. Most companies at this point, they're going to have a food safety quality type budget.
Mhm.
But a lot of times when we talk about that investment, it's often still assessed with the organizational standard ROI, isn't
You're
it?
right. Yeah.
So if I don't have, I mean, gosh, I've worked for companies where the ROI, I mean, it ranged from anywhere from, like 1 year, and I'd say that was long, to, ones where it's like, we need like a 90-day ROI. And
Mhm.
that can sometimes be tough
Right.
for food safety quality.
Right. Exactly. Because you guys know our role is really to help eliminate the risk,
Yeah.
to the
We're here for the
organization.
long game.
We're here for the long game. Exactly. Exactly. Which is exactly what an organization needs. But you're right. Companies are stuck in this area, are stuck when they find that they're stuck on this stage, right? Is that they're
Good
still
point.
trying to have conversations around RI when it comes to food safety. And
Yes.
that just shows the maturity of your organization.
That's a really good point because it's almost like I'm only focused on this round of golf and my score versus I'm trying to like reduce my overall handicap.
Right.
Right. And, maybe this round of golf is all we're trying to, that's the game for us right now.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
if we're thinking of like that bigger stage of where we want to be, then that really drives us into this world class
Right.
level,
Exactly.
doesn't it?
Exactly. I like to think about why I say like this is the biggest bucket of moderate maturity. And as you think about your own organization, even if you're in like a medium to large size organization, you would know you're in this area. If you're having conversations around RI and food safety,
Mm.
right? But you will also know if you have issues with communication between food safety and other functions,
Oh, yeah.
or if there's not a food safety person that's sitting at the leadership team, or the integration of food safety and quality is really not there in the way you get work done. And you're still having these issues where someone's designing a new product, R&D has a new product out, but they haven't thought about any food safety pieces, where it's like, oh, we want to run this new peanut butter SKU, and you're like, oh, we don't have peanuts at all in our facility, right? But someone has thought about this new great idea, which is probably a great idea, but no one had talked about the food safety implications.
Yeah.
um, those are just key pieces, or maybe even you have these policies and no one's following them. And it's difficult for you to roll out new policies throughout the organization. That's showing that you're really in this moderate maturity where you are starting to think about policies. You're starting to think, you have a GFSI certification, you have some way of following up. But really compliance is hard across the organization. Integration of food safety is hard. People aren't talking across the aisle, and they should be. Those are indications that you are at this moderate maturity stage, and
Mhm.
you really need to start focus on moving to the fourth stage of world class.
Yeah. Yeah, and actually that just brings up this memory of, like what it looks like. And I remember when we would work, like our team, right? We would work on our goals for the year. And it
Mm-hmm.
was always interesting because, right, we would get these goals that filter down from the organization that were things like, launching some new products
Mm-hmm.
or, implementing some new system that needs to, that's organizationally moving something forward.
Right.
And then our food safety quality team, we'd also have this list of things like we need to get these things done.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so interesting because now, right now, different perspective, different lens. One of the things that was missing that helped me understand that we were in moderate maturity is that we didn't have corporate or, global goals that were things like, maybe we want to like get rid of allergens from all of our facilities. Right.
Yeah.
These
Yeah.
bigger strategies for food safety and quality that were going to help minimize or reduce risk for the organization,
Right.
right from recalls to consumer issues or health or
Mm-hmm.
illness. Like those things were kind of embedded in these other parts, but weren't standalone initiatives that said, as a strategy, as an organization, we put food safety and quality at these highest levels.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's just a whole different skill set, mindset, culture to move us from like we just help really well with these technical programs. And I loved Annie. We talked about this, like even that transition to manager doesn't mean I do my normal work just better. Like I don't make
Right.
a better
Yeah.
report. It's actually shifting our mindset and how we contribute. And that's one of the things that really helps us move from this moderate maturity to this world class where
Mm-hmm.
we see these a little bit different and contribute and integrate differently as well.
Right, exactly. And you're talking about organizational priorities.
Mhm.
So I love it how you didn't say the food safety and quality team, we have the goal of eliminating allergens. Nope.
I
This
mean,
is
we kind of did a secret mission, but
right,
knowing it
right,
couldn't happen, right?
right. Of course. But the organization has gotten behind you to say,
Mhm.
no, this is an organizational goal from a food safety standpoint. And that's really what world class is about, is that mindset around food safety is I can't live without. It really
Yeah.
is a food safety is our priority. And that's how we're going to make decisions on everything that we do. We're going to have a food safety lens. And, at this point, food safety is talking in and around and through other parts of the organization where, these organizational goals, because they're organizational goals, it's not just food safety talking about it, supply chains talking about it, marketing's talking about it,
Mhm.
finance talking about it, maintenance talking about it, and each of them have real goals around food safety and quality. And it's a little, once you're at the point of having a world class culture, you can have these conversations with different groups, and different groups have food safety goals, even on their individual plans.
Yeah, and I think that's that is such a I don't want to say a significant shift, but it really is. I
Hmm.
think that is and when I look at it, when I've seen organizations, it seems like that's one of the hardest mind shifts
Yeah.
to make
Yeah.
because it's really about I think it even starts with us as food safety quality professionals putting on this different lens. And we
Hmm.
talk about this even as I move from like an individual contributor to a manager.
Right.
I have to now shift my mindset to say, oh, my work is this team
Right.
and
Yeah.
making sure this team's well-being is a priority and helping take care of them. That's a mindset shift.
Right.
Sometimes that's a little hard to get out.
Right.
And I think the same
True.
type of shift has to happen when we go from this moderate maturity to this world class, because
Hmm.
we really have to think instead of just how do I make this program better to organizationally, how do we help drive strategy and integration?
Right, exactly. Yeah, outside exactly what you said, like outside of the shift between compliance to early maturity, this is the second hardest one where you have to really start having conversations with people outside of food safety and quality. You're now trying to communicate with non-technical
Mhm.
people. And at this point, you really are starting to invest in company specific policies, so that means that you are now investing in resources to create those policies, roll out those policies, maintain those policies, audit against those policies.
Sure.
So like that's a whole new, at that point, that's a whole new leg of the food safety and quality organization,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
You
and really to help, the audience, right? Instead of just GFSI as the bar, now we're talking about like as an organization, we have our own set of criteria that is above and beyond GFSI on what we're doing and how we are viewing and owning our food safety quality journey.
Absolutely, absolutely. I say to people, when I'm talking to organizations that really should be moving towards this world class, so they're stuck in this moderate maturity stage, and they should be moving to world class. What I like to say to them is, regardless of what GFSI is saying, what kind of organization do you want to be?
Mm-hmm.
At this point, you are making the decision to say, okay, we are the type of organization that has this type of food safety policy, that have these type of food safety requirements, that have these quality requirements, with our products, because this is the type of organization we want to be seen as and known as. And it has nothing to do with what other people's standards are, right? GFSI is someone else's standards that you're trying to live up to. This is more around what type of organization do you want to be? And it could be as simple as color coding. I even use it with like color coding, where it's like, well, what kind of organization do you want to be? Do you want someone to walk into your facility and see a million different colors of trash cans around? And people are saying, well, what color is this? What color is that? And you're like, oh, they don't really mean anything. We just buy. Or do you want someone to walk into your facility and say, oh, yep, I know black trash cans where I put my trash. I know that blue is for allergens. I have my walkways for safety. I know exactly where to get my hairnets. Like all of that is how you want to behave as an organization. It's
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily required, right? But it's more around like, who do we want to be? And that's really
Yeah.
where world class maturity flows into.
Well, and what I love about, well, I mean, all the stages have this, but I think when we talk about food safety quality, and you've heard me say this before, is that, as we look at the evolution of how food safety quality has come to be, from quality control to quality assurance to quality system,
Mhm.
there's, you and I both know, because we both studied these very extensively. quality systems through the lens of, I'm going to say, kind of the engineering world is very different than the lens that we typically have found with food safety.
Right. Yeah.
And that's where I would, even challenge us to, or challenge teams, because when you're world class, I think it's part of that shift, that
Yeah.
really strong quality management system, which is really global, right? Global organizational risk and quality. And how do we start looking more through that lens and thinking about, cost of quality? And I know
Mhm.
that comes through on some of the GFSI stuff, but honoring and the essence of what it means to help make decisions and to drive budgeting and
Right.
investment, those type of tools that exist are phenomenal when it comes to
Mhm.
that strategy.
Yeah.
And I see those as being a really essential part of being able to be in the world class space.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you think about, budget, you're not having the conversation around ROI anymore. You really do have this essential budget to cover the things that you're talking about, right?
Mhm.
Like where you are really focused on food safety because again, it's something that you can't live without. It's a high priority. And regardless, we're going to spend money where we need to spend money on food safety.
Mhm.
So your organization has put together an essential budget that's specifically focused on food safety improvements, rolling out food safety policies, implementing new ones.
Mhm.
That's really
Technical leader
going to
development, strategic
be
planning, the integration. Yeah, I think
team
some of the
development.
soft skills that people will need to be able to navigate this journey as well.
Right,
Because the skills
exactly.
that we started off in compliance, if you've been in this for more than a hot minute, you know that those are not going to be the same skills that you're going to use to do GFSI compliance. They're not the
Absolutely.
same ones that are going to get you to world class. And so helping our teams evolve to support this new
Mhm.
stage is just as important as the technical parts.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the higher you move up in the stages, right, the more you need those soft skills.
Mhm.
Because now instead of you talking about, well, what does the FDA says at compliance, or what does SQF say? With GFSI. Now you are influencing the organization to say, well, what do we say as a
Mhm.
brand? What do we say as a company? And so that influence strategy looks a little different, and so therefore the soft skills look different. And you want to make sure that you have a budget for that to train your people to get to the point that they can own your food safety journey.
Yeah. And I love that because I think when we see uh, organizations that share their values, when it comes to kind of being in this state, well, let's be real. There's not a lot of companies that are actually at this state
Hmm.
or this stage. And so sometimes even our values are really aspirational to say, to kind of set the path of how do we get there.
Right.
So I think always the big question is, okay, so if that's where we really want to go and that's where we want to be, how do we come back and look now, like where are we at and what's it going to take to get there? Like,
Right.
what are
Exactly.
the things that are going to move us incrementally closer? Because, right, moving from stage to stage does not happen overnight.
No, it
Yeah.
doesn't. And it takes work, and it takes resources and investment and strategy and that people development, right? um it takes all of those things. And when we talk about the food safety journey and we walk through these 4 stages, right, it's like 4 stages, 4 years, we can get there, right? If you look at organizations that no, right? Like if you look at organizations that are even scratching the surface around world class, they've been in business for 200 years. And so this takes time to do. The goal is for you to really understand where you are on the journey and
Mhm.
what you need to do over the next year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years in order to continue moving your journey forward.
Mhm.
Because we said a little early on is that the problem is when you get stuck at a stage and your business continues to grow and
Yeah.
your food safety culture does not grow with it.
Yes. And I think even within each stage, right, there are multiple stages within. So
Mm-hmm.
you may experience, well, I've experienced, right, that pain, and it wasn't necessarily going from one stage to the next, but it was even within a stage trying to navigate just slightly forward
Right.
in preparation for that next stage. And
Yeah.
so, really, I love that you bring that up. It's where are we today,
Hmm.
and where's the business? Because I definitely worked for businesses that thought they were, in, and they were wonderful businesses. Um, the organization was ready to rock and roll, and food safety was like, we're rocking, but we're not rolling yet.
Right.
So we need to be at the same spot.
Right, exactly, exactly. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And it's so important because those are the conversations that even I've had with organizations where it's like, you guys are growing, and right now you have one food safety person. Really, you should have about 5 people,
Yeah.
and it seems excessive to jump from 1 to 5 people. But the problem is that you have been growing for the past 5 years, but you've done nothing on the food safety side. So we need to get you caught up so that as you continue to grow, you won't run into issues with your brand and with your product and with your business, right? Like that's really what's at risk. It's the business and your consumers that's consuming your product. And
Yeah.
so, I've had those conversations where it's like you haven't kept up your food safety side as your business is growing. So that is one of the first things we talk about, even back at compliance, to say that, we need to get you to compliance, and then we need to understand what your growth strategy looks like, because you have to continue to improve your food safety as your business grows.
Hmm. Yeah. And, there are some small businesses, and it's wonderful. Like they are good where they are at,
Hmm.
and they don't necessarily need to change stages. But I
Right.
think, like you said, the important part is understanding where you're at and what your business objectives are.
Right.
Because there's been plenty of companies who thought they wouldn't grow to the size they are, and look at where they are.
Right.
And so
Exactly.
even having those considerations up front to say, well, what if we do go down that path? Like we're not thinking maybe it's today or maybe, even in a couple of years, but that's really that important part of even considering what could be there and do you want to go there so that you
Right.
know what it looks like.
Right, exactly, exactly. And I know the people listening, as you think about your experience and where you are and when you've entered a company, right? Like one of the most common ones is, oh, we buy a product off of Amazon. Well, we know that's not going to work. Like we know that's not where you need to be. It's buying product off of Amazon. And maybe when you were making it in your kitchen and you were selling it at the local market, maybe that worked for you. But as you could continue to grow, you can't continue to buy offline in this way. So, that's a really clear example on like, okay, who are you going to be buying from in the next year? Who are you buying from the next 3 years? And then who are you going to buy from once you hit a global market? It
Yeah.
might not be the same supplier that you're using when you're in local markets or regional markets. So as companies are having those type of conversation, we just got to make sure that food safety is also a part of that conversation.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Tia, I think it's been fabulous, and I can't wait to see the comments when they come in, just to
Yes.
get your thoughts on these just 4 easy stages that lead people through I have to, I want to, I will do, and I can't live without when it
Absolutely.
comes to food safety.
Absolutely. And we actually have an assessment to help you determine where you are along the food safety journey. So if you're interested in that assessment, please send us an email at hello@foodsafetycatalyst.com. We're always here to chat with you. And, we love to hear where you are in your journey and what's kind of going on
Mhm.
in your world and where we can help. And so send us an email if you want that assessment. It's super easy assessment and kind of helps you understand exactly where you are in the journey and where you should be in the journey.
Mhm. Absolutely. And we have an entire lineup for May, all focused on small business.
Yes.
So even though we'll share with you every week what that is, if you want to have kind of the early notification and be part of, getting that information delivered right to your email inbox every week, once again, use this email address and send us yours, and we will get you on that list. So that way you can even have the preview of what's coming
Yeah, absolutely.
and
Or
other information.
yes, like Tiana pictures.
Yes. So,
Well, we always enjoy our time with you all, and I'm super excited to be back in here to support. So please, reach out to us, leave your comments. The comments aren't coming through on our end, so we would definitely check out LinkedIn later on today and answer any questions you may have, but also engage and have you all a part of this talk.
yes. So thank you so much for being with us. We will be back next Wednesday at noon Eastern, 11 Central. I have to do my time zones.
Right.
With another episode of Real Talk Food Safety, focusing on small businesses.
Yes. And today is May the 4th. So may the 4th be with you.
Yes. May the 4th be with you. Awesome. All right. Well, have a great day, and we will talk to everyone soon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.